Hi, my name is Sarah. Hi, my name is Haley.
Hello, my name is Connor, and today we are discussing the theory of the world being flat. And as the name entails, the world is flat theory is, of course, the theory of the Earth being flat, which roughly about one third of the young adult population ultimately believes. So we wanted to discuss today why we think much of the population is ultimately falling into this belief. So, Haley, you can get us started. Why do you believe people are falling into this belief?
I think personally that people mostly believe this because it's a fact that they can't see it. So them not being able to see the world is round, all they're seeing is like flat. So in their mind it's like, well, if I can't see it, then maybe the world really is flat.
That is true, and that's something I remember I used to talk with my mom at times too. Like, if the world is round, then why does everything always appear so flat to me sometimes?
Hmm.
And but even as we've studied and throughout history, there are people who have pointed out that during such lunar events such as the lunar eclipse, the Earth's shadow casted over the moon is round, or there's other factors as well, like
Hmm.
all the other celestial bodies in space are already round, so why would we not be round?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's also like that kind of mindset, like we are people, so we always have this kind of skepticism of other people, and it's like kind of this distrust of like, oh, like why would I believe so and so? So a lot of it is like, there's certain people who don't believe in certain types of sciences because they're skeptical of what they actually do, or if this is just kind of like something like that grabs money from you, or like something that they want you to believe but isn't actually true, because sometimes that can happen where there's this manipulation of the actual truth. And I think even without like all this like science to back up this kind of information, like we may not believe it, but other people are kind of like skeptical of the fact that like, oh, like, is this true, or is this what they want you to believe is the actual truth?
Okay, so yeah, you're arguing that like people are essentially saying that the government is just like trying to manipulate, or
Yeah,
they
I
feel
don't
that
like
way that
it
they're being
doesn't
manipulated.
necessarily have to be like the government, but I think just in general, like, scientists are researchers and they have
Hmm.
all this kind of evidence, but like you can be an expert and like you're a stranger to somebody, so that doesn't mean you have this kind of trust with somebody just because you are an expert in that field.
Hmm.
Also think that social media can play a big part of like thinking how people see how the world is flat. I think social media can spread a lot of false information faster than the correct information sometimes. And sometimes I feel like people might just want to feel special and be a part of that group that's like, no, 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 this is how it really is. Because, some people can be like that sometimes, instead of just being like, yes, the world is round. Because I've had so many arguments with my brother before, being like, no, the earth is round. And he's like, no, it's not.
Yeah, social media is a great thing. I think you brought up too, because as you said, there's a lot of manipulation out there. But I think it's also a factor of like the consumers as well, because a lot of people ultimately seek validation or they seek affirmation. They want to confirm what they already believe as opposed to actually want to be open to what the truth might actually be. Or a lot of social media influencers out there, they're very coercive, even from what I've heard as well. And it really goes back to the idea of they ultimately don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. So that ultimately just raises the question, like, are we meeting the needs of these people who are seeking this information in the first place?
Hmm. I think it's also interesting that you brought up social media because it kind of brings up the fact of like, oh, why do we trust somebody more than we trust somebody else who might have the kind of like expertise or experience in that kind of field, rather comparatively to somebody who may not know what they're talking about. But I think with social media, what it kind of like is like social media nowadays is like people trying to be relatable, people trying to be like this person that you can relate to, and in return, you kind of build this trust with this person because you can look at them and be like, oh, I relate to this person. Where in comparison, researchers, like, they're not in that kind of field to be like, to appeal to other people to what they want. So, like, they're not really people who are like, I guess, relatable to most other people. So, like, when social media says something, but research says something else, who are the people going to believe? Maybe public figures who
Mm-hmm.
they personally feel like, oh, I can trust them because I can relate to them in some certain way. Whereas, like I see science and it may be true, but since I don't trust that person comparatively to a public figure, I
Yes.
probably won't believe that.
I agree. And sometimes it feels like content creators almost have more authority over like especially our generation, compared to like the government. Like someone in our age range or just anybody honestly can look at the government and because they don't like the government or they don't trust the government, no matter what they say to them, it's like, okay, I'm not going to trust that. But if they have like a content creator or someone famous on like social media and they really like that person, if that person says one thing, they're going to probably agree with that person more over like some person that they don't trust or like to.
Yeah. Trust is a very huge thing when it comes to exchanging information. I remember our professor was doing a great job of building trust with us as he was teaching as well. He often even showed us examples of like why certain things work, like or what even a good leader is. A good leader looks out for their people. He doesn't just bark orders at them necessarily either. And I think and that just goes back to like what we talked about with the influencers as well. They're not really necessarily barking things at you. They're really just trying to entertain you and teach you at the same time, which I think is why so many people find what they're saying to be believable because they're entertained, they feel invited into this information.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably why people who kind of believe like the earth is flat is like from their own eyes it seems flat. And then because other people who they presumably see as relatable
Mm-hmm.
tell them that it's flat, because you kind of have this agreement, like it might have been like a micro thought in your head before, but when somebody you trust tells you something that perpetuates and like agrees with that thought, you're gonna take that thought as like the truth. Like you're gonna take it as it's the right thing rather than like, oh, this could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, absolutely. Was there anything else either of you had would like to add?
I found on NOAA's National Ocean Service website that the first person to discover like thinking that the world was flat, like the conspiracy was back in 300 BC.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've known for a while that the earth is round. Like people back then, like ancient history, they've always had this kind of skepticism of like what shape the earth is, like pre all this science that backs it up. And like we may have not known always how the system kind of works because at one point we thought the earth was the center of the universe, but now we know it's the sun and this is not the only universe.
Well, not even the sun, really. Our sun isn't even the center of our galaxy.
Yeah, it's just the center of our solar system.
Yeah.
And so like with all this history or with all this like science backing up, it's kind of interesting to see like even though it dates back years and years, like people are still skeptical of it. Like they're not sure if it's true or not. And it can also probably because like past they believe somebody and then they ended up being wrong and based off of that, because of that person's kind of relatability to like researching, they don't trust in it. Because when somebody breaks your trust, you're skeptical, you're like kind of worried about everything that other people who are kind of similar to that person say. So it's, I think, always about how your brain works, like your critical thinking of other people.
Mm.
I also think it is crazy how something that has been going on for that long, like for thousands of years, this people, even with the proof, people are still saying no, the earth is flat. I think it's crazy it's been going on for so long and it's still going on.
Yeah, it
It's still
is.
something people will argue about.
I mean, we have photo evidence that it is round, but some people believe that it's fake because, like, not everybody can be an astronaut and see from space.
That's true.
Yeah,
So,
that's
like, they
true. It's
believe,
already a very hard and very expensive thing to
yeah.
do.
And I mean, like, this is from the University of Nevada, but it says that, like, if you hop on a plane and you go to Cape Town in South Africa or Melbourne in Australia, the two cities are located kind of in the southern hemisphere of the Earth, and you can't see the North Star. So there's, like, more than one pieces of evidence to say, like, there's reasons why you can't see it because parts of the Earth are blocking it, or, like, other structures like the moon are blocking it, like how lunar eclipses certain places can see lunar eclipses while others can't because of your proximity on the Earth to the moon and the sun at the time, which is like, I guess, newer kind of like evidence. Like, people don't really use that as like core evidence, but it is kind of like dead evidence that there are reasons why we believe it's round and the reasons why it is round, just further than just like picture evidence or like research, like people who say these things, like there's more than one reason and you can see with your own eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's even been travel evidence, like Christopher Columbus, he even attempted to travel around the world just to prove that it was round in himself, which is how he found America, of course. But then years later, some people traveled across the Pacific Ocean and found their way back to Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And then we found to confirm that there was indeed found just by travel alone.
Oh yeah. And it's also um different places see the sun at different times. So if the world was flat, like the sun doesn't go like side to side. The sun goes round.
Mm.
So if the world was flat, that also wouldn't like
Yeah.
make sense either.
I mean, also different places experience different seasons.
Yes,
Different
exactly.
times, like
Different time
Australia,
zones and
like that wouldn't happen if the Earth was flat. But I guess like some people, because it's flat, I mean, I guess they still believe it's like rotating and stuff. But like with that kind of flat, like kind of thing, even with rotating, and I think like rotating around the sun and rotating on its axis, it's not gonna give the same effect as like, like monsoons or winter and summer weather being opposite of each other based on like your location. Like for example, we're in winter right now, but Australia, I'm pretty sure they're in their summer months.
Yeah.
But I believe like I don't think that would happen if the Earth was flat, even
Yeah,
if you're
that's true.
rotating on an axis, because on an axis they can't really rotate on an axis because it kind of is slanted. It's flat, so you're kind of just rotating in a circle, which wouldn't give Australia summer while other people winter
Yeah,
necessarily.
absolutely. Yeah, and also if the world was really flat, then what would happen to our oceans as well? It would just spill over the edge.
I believe they say like the people who believe that the Earth is flat is that there's like an ice wall at the end, but I don't necessarily believe or understand why they say that's there's an ice wall. Because yeah, it makes sense. There's ice because there's Antarctica and
Yeah,
stuff, but like all around,
yeah,
it's not. It doesn't make sense because you have historical of people saying, they sailed across the oceans and like they went to, like America and stuff based on the oceans, like having an ice ring, that means you couldn't have done that from one end of like, like Asia and then to like America, which you can do by because it is round, but saying there's an ice wall, it's not possible with
yeah. That
all the
wouldn't even really
evidence.
make sense with things like the equator. The equator is like the hottest surface area on Earth,
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
and there certainly wouldn't be any polar ice caps there.
Yeah.
I've also seen the conspiracy that leads off of this conspiracy is that the world is flat, but people say it's round. The government says it's round because we're kept in like a ball. And like the government is like controlling every little thing. And I'm just like, oh wow.
It's actually interesting because if we're kept in a ball, like why would Australia have different like opposite seasons
Yes.
rather than the rest of the world? And why would other like I guess you could control, but like why would you control over like there's hundreds of countries in this world. like you can't control everything. So it doesn't necessarily make sense. And like I think this was a while ago, but like there was this guy who spent a bunch of money. Like people spend money to find out if these are true or not, and oftentimes they don't find out true. But I remember this one experiment that they had where like it was walls with holes in them, and if you shine a flashlight through it, if it was flat, you could see the light straight through all of these like holes. And if it was round, because it's round, you can't see through all of them, like just by shining a flashlight into one. And this guy had done this experiment, and what he found out was, even though he believed it was flat, his experiment, which works in theory, proved that the earth was round. So you have people who like believe one thing and they can change their minds by proving themselves wrong. But like you can't just tell people like evidence, like what the teacher said, like people aren't going to change their minds because you said something. People are going to change their minds when they put you put the idea in their head, or like they figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. And one thing I did want to bring up briefly is how many old religions were way back then during these times as well. Now the Greeks, of course, they did believe that the Earth was round, but they believed that like Helios would drag the sun along around them when they initially believed that they were the center of the universe. However, there were other religions such as the Egyptian religions that worship the Egyptian gods. They believed that Ra ultimately like had the sun on a chain and he simply revolved the sun around the flat Earth.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah.
Wow. It's interesting because religions, like, they always base off their beliefs of what the current kind of consensus is of like, oh, because like you bring up how the Greeks believed that like the sun revolved around the earth because around that time people believed the earth was the center of their solar system and the lead sun was right next to it.
Mm.
So like it's interesting to say like religious because like you can see even with religions, even though they have different beliefs of like how the sun or like how the earth is, you can see that they understand that the general like public believes that at the time the earth was the center and the sun revolved around it. And I think it's interesting because like although historically like religion and like government and stuff and science have not been great together, but you can see how like current research at the time and religion, they'll take those and kind of combine those to create beliefs because it would make more sense for that time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we've had quite a good run at this point. So, is there any other last minute things you two wanted to add?
That's everything.
All right. Well, thank you two for your time. I think we've had a great
Thank you.
podcast.
Yes.
I hope you guys both have a great Christmas. It's not touchscreen.
My bad.
Yeah.